Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. So as many of you requested, today's video is curated from the prequel stories to the video that we had yesterday, which I've also added to the end of this video for those of you who want the complete saga. I do have to add that these posts were very long, so I did take some editing liberties without compromising the story. Now let's get started. This post is from the subreddit entitled People, and it's by user Coffee Fanatic. My ex-mother-in-law insults me over my job and my body. Background: my ex-husband, Bill, and I chose to end our marriage amicably. There was no cheating or anything like that this time. We had been married before and he cheated on me. We got divorced, but after some time we realized we wanted to get married again. I know. However, there was just too much stress due to some issues that happened, and we both decided that it was for the best. Both of us were feeling the strain and our mental health was taking hits all the time. We argued a lot, even over the pettiest of reasons. Our eldest son, Bobby, was affected by it. We had stopped going to couples therapy and weren't even sleeping together as much as we used to. Bill knew what he was getting into, but he decided after our youngest was born that he couldn't deal with it as he thought. After talking about it and trying to come up with solutions, we chose to end our marriage. It hurt and broke our eldest son's heart, but we agreed to stay friends, and so far, it has been working out fine. He's still in our lives, has a room for our kids at his place, takes our eldest to school every morning, and visits a couple of days out of the week. I think we're good at co-parenting. It was the best decision we made. At least, I thought so. I moved me and the boys into a 2-bedroom apartment, and I am working full-time as a bartender at a gentleman's club. I love my job. I've only been there a few weeks and I'm making good money, close to $1,000 a week just in wages and tips. So with alimony and child support, we're sitting pretty. Now I am trying to lose weight so I can become a dancer at the club. I've always struggled with my weight. I was never overweight, but not exactly skinny, just like most of the women in my family. We're thick. Anyway, with all the work I'm doing, I feel good about myself for the first time in years, and I'm an ever-evolving work in progress. Bill's parents immigrated from Greece to the US right after they got married. His father found success in real estate while his mother maintained the family home. They've always lived in wealthy comfort in huge houses, which could be considered mansions. He went to college and got his bachelor's. I never attended college, and quickly got an internship at his current career where he makes 6 figures at. Maybe I am biased, but he is the perfect man, at least on the surface. I have to admit that he is hot, fit, and a great ass. Needless to say, I was nowhere in my ex-husband's league, but his family welcomed me with open arms. They were the family I always dreamed of having, the opposite of my family in every way. I loved them so much and called my in-laws mom and dad. We always got along and talked almost daily. Mother-in-law often sent me recipes of Greek dishes for me to learn how to cook for Bill because he loved it. We often went to a little Greek bistro as a family, and I'd make it a point to have our eldest try stuff from Bill's country. Now you know all about us, so let me tell you what happened after the divorce. You can imagine my surprise when my mother-in-law called me to chastise me about the divorce. She said that if I had been a better wife and lover, Bill would have stayed with me. She said that divorcing him twice was just too great a sin to forgive, and I needed to find God and pray for forgiveness for my wicked ways. I reminded her that Bill cheated on me to cause the first divorce and broke things off with me for the second one. I don't know where this was coming from, but she needs to have this talk with her son. She blew up at me saying my new job is tempting sin and that it was the devil's playground and my body would be soiled for her son and he wouldn't want to be with a woman like me. She said every picture she received from us since I began bettering myself wasn't worth going into her albums because I looked like a floozy. I got upset and told her it wasn't my looks that were the problem, it was her son's decision and it was based on the stress from things she knows about. She said Bill told her that that was just one reason and said that I wasn't the beautiful, demure woman he married anymore and didn't want to be with a floozy. An effing floozy. I started to cry in disbelief mother-in-law would be so mean to me after she had been so kind to me all of these years. It blindsided me. The club I work at is not a typical strip club. It is a high-end gentleman's club. Our prices are not cheap. The dancers are only allowed to show their breasts during private dances. They have to keep their lingerie on working the poles. There is no touching allowed, and a distance of 6 feet is heavily enforced by our bouncers for private dances, and lap dances are not allowed. The stage is protected by a wide barrier that maintains a comfortable 6 feet distance between the dancers and the spectators. My boss is all about safety and doesn't take crap from anyone, even the high rollers that think they can get away with anything. He has thrown out several people since I started working there. Anyway, I hung up on her and called Bill and asked him to come over. As soon as he walked in, I confronted him about what his mother said. He assured me that it wasn't true and that he didn't know why mother-in-law said those things. I asked him if he was bitter because of my job and that I had been bettering myself. He said no and that he was happy for me. He called his mother and put her on speakerphone and asked her why she was so cruel to me. Mother-in-law got upset, feeling ganged up on, admitted it was a lie but was only looking out for Bill. Bill sighed and said it wasn't appropriate to speak to me like that and said that he was the one who wanted a divorce, not me. He reminded her of all of the hell I had gone through, to which she said that I brought that into our lives. I snapped and reminded her that it was a friend of hers, Karen, that's actually her real name and the way she behaves, who put me and my family through hell for the last effing year. That's another long story. She began crying. Bill looked guilty, like he wanted to apologize for making his mother cry, but he said she should apologize to me for being unkind and holding my past against me. She went silent and then hung up. I went to work that night and had a miserable shift. I have horrible butterfingers when I am overly stressed or upset, and I broke several bottles of alcohol that night. My boss gave me crap about it, and I felt so awful inside that I barely managed to hold it together. He called me to his office after my shift and asked what was up. I explained the situation to him and he apologized. I did tell them about my past so he and his wife understand why I get like I do sometimes. Certain things trigger me, I can't help it. He said it was okay and not to worry about it. He gave me the following night off and said to take a day to myself to calm down. I cried myself to sleep when I got home. Bill came over the next day with flowers and took me to lunch. He said father-in-law told them that the divorce had been hard for mother-in-law too, and she couldn't stand thinking that her son could be the cause of both divorces and was in complete denial about it. So she pointed the blame at me, using my job as her justification to be so nasty. No way her wonderful son could have strayed so far. Father-in-law did express his disappointment in Bill for taking the easy way out and divorcing me, believing that any couple can overcome their problems with time and healing, but he wasn't going to push the issue. Mother-in-law did apologize eventually after talking with Bill. She said she was just frustrated and didn't want to admit or accept that he did anything wrong and assumed I was just trying to make him jealous of other men because of my job and my self-improvement, and she didn't mean anything she said. She didn't apologize to me directly, but through Bill, so I don't know if her apology was genuine or if it was to appease him. After thinking about it a while, I decided to forgive her, sort of, but things won't be as they were. Bill will now be in charge of keeping her updated about our kids, and I asked him not to discuss me at all, not even to say I am doing fine. If she calls me, I won't be picking up. This is the first just no behavior that I have experienced. She welcomed me with open arms into the family, embraced my eldest son and claims him as her grandchild, and was always kind to me, never once judging me for my past until now. I don't know what to think or why she decided to be like this. I know people sometimes deserve second chances, but I would rather not give them the option to prove me wrong. So I'll be going no contact with her for a while. Now, Bill thinks I'm overreacting and being unreasonable. He said I needed to be more understanding, that she is a Catholic that believes divorce is a sin. He acknowledges that it is his fault for the divorce though, both of them, but he added that I could have made more of an effort to be emotionally invested in our marriage. He then went on to say my job is a problem for her and that maybe I should consider looking at something else to make her happy. I saw red. I got pissed and I told him to pound sand. My job makes me happy and that is all that matters. I don't care if mother-in-law has a problem with it. I don't care if he does either. It's my life. He chose to leave, not me. I won't be told what to do by anyone. My job provides for me and my kids and keeps a roof over our heads. I reminded him that his alimony and child support, while appreciated, isn't needed and that I can manage alone without his help, even with 2 kids. I won't apologize for my job. I also won't apologize for bettering myself and finally finding the self-confidence I didn't know I had. And I won't apologize for his effing mistakes. First the cheating, then deciding his wife's trauma, psycho mother, was too much of a stressor on his fragile existence. I won't roll over for anyone ever again. I then said I am not his effing wife anymore, so he and his mother don't get a say in what I do. I then told him to get the F out. I won't let people walk all over me anymore, not even Bill. I don't know if I am overreacting, but I don't think I am. This man came into my life and took me and my son into his family. He adopted my eldest as his own and rescued him when he was kidnapped by my psycho effing mother. We had a child together. I found out he was cheating on me for an entire year with some shameless bitch at his job, and I took him back and married him for the 2nd time after forgiving him. Then his mother brings another psycho into my life, Karen, and I am the one having to deal with it. I had my body picked apart and ridiculed, my privacy was violated, I was threatened and my marriage was tested, but he blames me for the breakdown of our marriage because I wasn't the emotionally invested enough. I did the damn best I could. I worked hard, maintained the house, and took care of our kids. I never asked for anything for myself and always put him and my kids before me. Yeah, F that. I don't owe anyone crap. Alright, well that was the first of the prequel posts. Now I'm pretty sure you guys are wondering, who is this Karen character that came up twice? Well, if we're gonna focus on the mother-in-law Bill saga part, we can call Karen part of a non-fictional canon to OP's whole story. This is also where OP's psycho mother would fit in. Anyways, no need for comment or commentary, let's just move on to the next post. And really quickly, don't forget about my playlists. Let's move on. My ex-in-laws are here in town and wanted to discuss everything with me. I didn't want to, but Bill pleaded with me, so I went. We met up at the bistro, just the 4 of us. Ex-mother-in-law got right into the discussion without giving us a chance to order drinks. She apologized to me directly this time, stating that she didn't mean to hurt me, but was frustrated about my job and insisted on me finding something else. She doesn't want to tell her friends or the family that her grandson's mother works at a strip club and says it is tempting sin again. I told her I'm not sleeping with any of the men that come into my job. I then said if it bothers her that much, to not say anything about me. She started crying and praying right there at the table, and I was getting pretty annoyed. I began to realize that this wasn't new behavior. Whenever she would get upset and want to shift the blame or ignore what was being told to her, she would start crying and praying for the person who is upsetting her. I was close to losing my crap. She finally calmed down and wiped her tears, and then said me and Bill should get back together and get remarried at the courthouse. It would absolve our sins in the eyes of God. She then commanded I quit my job, stop wearing makeup, and the new wardrobe I had gotten for myself. She even suggested I cut my hair. Abso-effing-lutely not, lady. It took me years to grow my hair to the length it is now. I said no and got up to leave, but Bill insisted I stay because he had something to say. He tells us that he has been lying to all of us. He admits that he has been seeing someone else behind my back for the last 4 months. While I've been home taking care of the kids and maintaining the house, he has been sleeping with another woman on his so-called office days. He said he wasn't attracted to me anymore because I was letting myself go. He expressed frustration that I only care about my appearance now instead of when we were married. He then said that he didn't want to be a father to my kids anymore and wanted to be done with me permanently. He will continue to pay the alimony and child support, but he does not want to see me or the kids. Ex-mother-in-law and ex-father-in-law were shocked into silence. I could only sit there and stare at this man. Ex-mother-in-law begins crying while ex-father-in-law is trying to comfort her. Bill went from being the wonderful, upstanding gentleman to a cowardly, sinful adulterer, child abandoner for her. I actually felt sorry for her. Ex-father-in-law then asks if he was still seeing the other woman. Bill says yes, and that he didn't mean for it to go this far, but he didn't want to hurt anyone, more than he's already done. I don't know why, but I was so angry I could only laugh. This man lied to me. He divorced me under false pretenses and has been seeing some other woman since right after my youngest son was born. Now, a lot of the weird things he had done during that time made sense. While my ex-in-laws were going nuts on him, I just sat there. The manager had to come out and tell us all to be quiet. Bill looked at me and begged me for my forgiveness and said he was sorry, but he just couldn't handle life attached to me anymore, even if that meant giving up his rights to the kids. I ordered a cocktail from the manager, who was still standing there, looking confused. I was smiling the entire time. When the waitress brought the cocktail, she handed it directly to me. I said thank you, then threw the cocktail in Bill's face. I stood up and walked out. After that, Bill sent me a text that he'll be sending my kids' belongings to me and blocked me on everything. Ex-mother-in-law sent me a text and said she would not be bothering me anymore. She was heartbroken over what her son had done, and she and ex-father-in-law will be cutting him out of their lives as well. I didn't respond. I feel bad for her and ex-father-in-law, but my only thoughts are with my kids right now. My eldest will have to be spoken to, and I don't know how to even go about having that conversation. I decided to keep him out of school tomorrow so I can take him to my therapy session so we can do it there. I picked up my kids from the sitters, then took them home. Bobby knows something is up, but I am not ready to talk about it with him yet. My mind is all over the place. I am crushed to have to tell him he is losing another dad. I don't want to lie to him, but I don't want to break his heart. Bill is such an effing a-hole for this. This isn't fair to my kids at all. I hate him for this. I effing hate him with everything in my soul. All for some other woman. I called my boss and told him I needed to take a couple of days off to figure things out and explained the situation. He understood and told me to take the time I needed. A friend of mine will have the kids at her place when I work. She has kids of her own, one of them being in my son's class. Yes, I am paying her, and just to clarify, no, I am not angry at Bill for cheating on me again. I always knew in the back of my mind that he would. I wanted to trust him, but he showed me that he hasn't changed. I'm actually fine with it. What I am not okay with is him abandoning the kids. He's not the man I loved. He's someone else entirely and put on an act for years. I don't know what to do about my ex-in-laws. It's not their fault. Bill lied to them too, and they were acting based on what he was telling them. I did text them that they could come over tomorrow to see the kids after therapy and we can talk. They said they would, so we'll see how that goes. I won't deprive them from the chance to be grandparents to my boys just because their son is an a-hole. I will now be going for official child support and full custody of my kids to protect them. Now, I'm gonna have a tall glass of wine and watch the latest House of the Dragon episode before going to sleep. Well, for those of us who already know how this whole story ends, yes, we know that Bill sucks and he's just proven as much already. So, let's not waste any time and move on to the next post in this saga. I took my kids to my therapy session today and we broke the news to Bobby. He was understandably upset, but he understood. I was honest to a point. I told him Bill had decided not to be a part of our lives anymore and that it would just be me, him, and his baby brother from now on. It is the truth, but I left out the cheating part. He knows about the first time Bill cheated on me and that hurt him pretty badly. I'll tell him the truth when he is older. We discussed my ex-in-laws as well, and my therapist said that based on what she understands of the situation, seeing them might be counterproductive, but ultimately left the choice up to me. Bobby decided he didn't want to see them, and in truth, neither did I, but I did decide to meet with them with my youngest. I dropped Bobby off at my friend's house and went to meet with my ex-in-laws at the bistro as I wasn't comfortable with them knowing where I live. They fawned over the baby, who was all smiles and giggles. I ordered food and just sat quietly to eat while they spent time with him. Ex-mother-in-law cried that my son was the spitting image of his father, and I shifted uncomfortably but forced a smile and nodded my head. Not once did they ask about Bobby. I told them that I didn't mind them being in my kids' lives, but there would have to be boundaries set in place. I laid out my terms, which were very reasonable. They can do Zoom calls and we can visit for Christmas, provided I have the money to make the trip. I will not be told how to dress or how to live my life by them or anyone else. My lifestyle and my job are my business, and they will not interfere anymore. I also do not accept religion in my life, and I do not want my children to be indoctrinated. If at any point my children decide they want to accept religion, it is their decision and no one will make it for them. I will also not be told what to do with my kids, as they are mine and I am their mother. Those were my terms and are non-negotiable. They did not like this and they both began to argue. I told them I won't accept anything other than them agreeing to my terms, and if not, they will never see us again. I will initiate no contact permanently. Ex-father-in-law agreed, but ex-mother-in-law began to cry and pray. I told her to stop because that crap doesn't work on me anymore. I will not be manipulated into submitting to her will. I am not her dancing monkey to order around to dance at her command. She went stone silent, and after some prodding from ex-father-in-law, she nodded and then looked at my son, who had fallen asleep in her arms. She then smiled like she was up to something. She got to talking about how great it would be if they took my son to Greece with them on their trip. The family would love him and he would fit in perfectly. No one would know he is half white. I'm white, mainly German. His hair is so dark, just like Bill. He would love it there. My sisters will adore him. I was frozen, and the smile on ex-mother-in-law's face told me all I needed to know. She looked at me and said, "We're going to Greece for a year to be with family there. My sisters haven't seen us for a long time and I want to introduce the baby to them. You shouldn't mind. It is our home country after all. He should be introduced to our culture. We'll bring him back. A year isn't that long." She was talking about it like she was trying to sell me a vacation. It may be their home country, but it isn't mine. My jaw hit the floor. The effing audacity. I'm paraphrasing here, but I said, absolutely not. Not only is it inappropriate to even suggest taking my son away from me, his mother, for a whole effing year overseas, but it is also severing the bond that I have with him. He won't know who I am in a year. I would be a complete stranger to him. You also want to take him away from his older brother who loves him to death. You are crazy if you think I would ever entertain such a crazy idea. Ex-mother-in-law went total cat butt-faced and glared at me. Ex-father-in-law sighed and looked at his wife. "You can't expect her to agree to something like that. Would you agree to it if it were your son?" Ex-mother-in-law snapped and said she did lose her son, and I said, "So your solution is to steal mine?" She then went quiet for a while and looked like she had a moment of clarity. She then looked at my son again and I saw actual tears, which surprised me. She then said that she was so heartbroken over Bill that losing him was like losing a piece of herself, and my son is all she has left of him. She apologized and promised she would honor my wishes. She said she loves us, but has a hard time letting go. Bill has shattered her spirit and she thought my son could be how she heals from the heartbreak. I told her that she has every reason to be upset with Bill and that none of this is her fault. But she needs help because religion is not the fix for every problem. It's only giving her temporary relief as she keeps her head buried in the sand to avoid facing her problems. Sometimes you have to stop using it as a crutch and deal with your issues head on. I told her I can't go back to living on someone else's terms. I am still in therapy dealing with the trauma of my past, and it isn't fair to impose her will on me, even if she believes it is for my own good. She did ask if the trauma of my past is what led me to being a stripper. I told her I wasn't currently a stripper. I am a bartender, but I will be switching to dancing once I am at a weight I feel comfortable with. Dancers make way more money than bartenders do. Since her son has decided to F off and leave me with 2 kids to take care of alone, I'll do whatever it takes to provide for them. I then told her my past trauma is my own burden to bear and that I will not let it ruin me as it has others. It is why I am in therapy. My therapist knows about my desire to become a dancer and has not discouraged me from pursuing it. I told her that any extra money I make is going into my kids' college fund, so they won't have to struggle as I did. She actually appreciated that and said she would back off, even if she doesn't agree with it. I told her that was fine and I understood her concerns, but then talked about Bill. They admitted that they likely won't cut him off permanently, but they are apprehensive and decided they needed time and told him not to call them for a while, even though it breaks their hearts to do it. He wasn't happy, but ultimately he said he would honor their wishes. They lamented over where they went wrong with him. I told him it wasn't their fault. Bill is a grown-ass man who makes his own decisions. We talked about Greece and ex-mother-in-law's sisters. They will be gone for a year as one of my ex-mother-in-law's sisters has cancer and doesn't have long left, and all of this drama with Bill has left them emotionally drained. I think the time away from the US will do them some good, especially ex-mother-in-law. We agreed on weekly Zoom calls and exchanged hugs, then I returned home with both of my sons after picking Bobby up. All in all, despite ex-mother-in-law's temporary insanity, I'm happy with how the meeting went. And that was the whole holiday debacle. That mother-in-law, man, she's a piece of work. Anyways, let's now move on to the final part of the prequel stories. It's been a month since the Greece incident, and in truth, life is amazing right now. I have dropped enough weight and I am in the best shape of my life. I go to the gym 4 times a week, all the while balancing my job and raising my kids, maintaining my home along with pole dancing classes. I'm on my way to becoming a dancer, but for now, I'm sticking with bartending while doing private dances at the club. I'm making great money. I have even started seeing one of the bouncers at my job. We'll call him Kyle. He's a sweet, caring man who isn't afraid to speak his mind. He is a former military. He is really good looking too. Think Jack Steller from Sons of Anarchy. They could be twins. Yes, he knows about my past. Kyle is one of those social media junkies that likes posting just about everything on his Facebook. One night out at dinner, he took a photo of us together and posted it with the caption, "Future wife." As sweet and adorable as that is, I did ask him to take it down as I am not totally comfortable being on social media just yet, but by then, the damage was already done. One of the club's cattier girls, Samantha, is mutual friends with my ex, Bill. She knows he is my ex-husband and is aware of the divorce and all of the drama. She is the type of girl that likes to stir up a bunch of crap and then sit back and watch the fallout with a gleeful smile on her face. If she weren't friends with my boss's wife, he would have fired her a long time ago. She routinely shows up late, gossips about everyone she works with, has drunk herself into a stupor more than once, and has beaten up a client when he didn't pay her more than she thought she deserved. And that was all after I started working there a few months ago. She is incredibly toxic and most of us just avoid her. Long story short, she saved the picture and showed Bill, and he went insane. Samantha came into work a couple of days ago and informed me that Bill somehow found out about Kyle and he is really upset and has made threats to come to my job. As mad as I was, I told her I didn't care. She horribly feigned sympathy and wished me luck. I informed my boss and Kyle of what Samantha had said. They assured me they would keep a lookout and not to worry. Last night during my shift, I am behind the bar serving drinks like usual. Ever since Samantha told me Will was making threats to come to my job, I had been nervously keeping one eye on the door at all times. Sure enough, he shows up with 2 of his equally douchey friends. It was almost comical how alike they looked. Slicked back hair, polos tucked into dress pants, blazers, and effing sunglasses at night. I wanted to bury my head on the floor in shame for having seen anything in this man or considered him marriage material. I try to ignore him and go back to serving drinks. He notices me and makes a beeline for the bar with thing 1 and 2 following right behind him. This is when he is intercepted by my boss, Kyle, and one other bouncer, Greg. I couldn't hear the conversation between them over the music playing, but I could tell from their body language that things were getting heated. It began to draw a crowd pretty fast, and before I knew what happened, Kyle grabbed Bill up by his jacket and proceeded to usher Bill out the door, kicking and screaming while Greg and my boss escorted thing 1 and 2 out after him. It was pretty anticlimactic, but I am glad no one was hurt, mostly. After work was finished, I asked Kyle what was said. He told me Bill was pissed that I couldn't bother to improve myself during our marriage and I had moved on and he wanted me back. When Kyle established that he was the man in my life, Bill called me a floozy and a bitch and some other colorful words. That was when Kyle grabbed him up and violently threw him out of the club onto his ass in the parking lot and said that if he harassed me again, he would F him up, my effing hero. Things 1 and 2 came out right after and helped Bill to his feet. They got in the car with their pride wounded and peeled out of the parking lot. I'm thankful the situation didn't escalate and so far, Bill hasn't tried showing up at my apartment. I'm hoping he takes Kyle's warning seriously. I'm happy moving on with my life. Alright, and that is the prequel story to the story that we saw in yesterday's video. Now, for those of you who didn't get the chance to see yesterday's video, you can just stay on this one and we'll continue with the story right now. So, Bill showed up at my effing job during the biggest event of the year with my ex-in-laws. Every year at my job, there is a Christmas-themed party. The dancers dress up as sexy elves, my boss dresses up as Santa, the bartenders dress up as reindeer, and the bouncers dress up as snowmen. The place is beautifully decorated as a winter wonderland with a huge throne for my boss to sit on and custom poles for the dancers to dance around him. It's a huge thing at my job and it is always one of the highest grossing nights of the year. It's advertised all over town that people can come, get their pictures taken with us, sit on Santa's lap, and enjoy a fun evening with custom Christmas music made by a DJ. We even have Christmas-themed drinks, guys, and they are so good. I was so excited about it because I started working there this year, so it was my first time being part of this event. I was dancing that evening, so I was dressed up as a sexy elf. I was feeling great. It was pretty late into the evening, around midnight, when this incident took place. I was dancing on stage when out of nowhere I heard the shrieking sound of my ex-mother-in-law crying. I turned around and there they were, ex-mother-in-law, ex-father-in-law, and effing Bill, my ex. Ex-mother-in-law was slapping Bill's arm and pointing at me. I couldn't make out what she was saying over the music. All I could hear was the shrill sound of her voice. I started looking around for Kyle, my boyfriend. I couldn't see him, but I did see other bouncers, so I waved at them, trying to get their attention. We have a special wave that when a bouncer sees it, they know to come running. Bill comes to the stage and starts shouting at me while the men around him were waving cash at me. He tells me to come down and to come with him, that I was bringing shame to his family. I ignored him. I saw a couple of bouncers heading for us, so I kept dancing, believing I was saved. That was protocol. Call the bouncer and keep working to avoid making a scene. It was then I felt someone grab my ankle and pull. In my panic, I fall and let out a scream. I look up and it's Bill. He had pulled himself onto the stage and grabbed me. I start kicking at him with my other foot until the bouncers finally got there and pulled him away from me. I feel someone else grab me and I screamed again, but when I look up, I saw it was Kyle. Bill and my ex-in-laws were taken into the office, while I was taken backstage to ride out the panic attack. Kyle held me until I calmed down. The police were called and I got to watch as Bill was forced into the back of a police cruiser in handcuffs. He's being charged with public disturbance, assault, and trespassing. My boss was talking to my ex-in-laws, telling them not to come back and warning them the police would be called if they did. Despite how pissed he was, my boss was pretty calm and polite. I then heard my ex-mother-in-law shouting about how she was going to take me to court to take my children away from me because a godless floozy like me wasn't fit to be a mother. I couldn't take hearing that and I rushed at her. Kyle had to grab me and stop me, but I was screaming at her that she was a psychopath and she would never get her hands on my kids again, that she had raised a lying, cheating, emotionally abusive scumbag. She raised a hand to slap me, but the bouncers and police got between us. She and ex-father-in-law got into their car and drove off after being threatened with arrest. After calm had been restored, we all went back inside and resumed the party. I made good money that night. Even Samantha, my job's entitled gossip, couldn't deny what Bill and my ex-in-laws did was crazy. Over the weekend, I got a call from someone claiming to be Bill's ex-girlfriend, the one he cheated on me with. I asked her how she got my number and she said she had her ways. She said she decided to call me after Bill called her begging to get bailed out. She told me that during their relationship, ex-mother-in-law treated her like crap and compared me and her a lot and always acted like she wasn't good enough. She was relieved when they went to Greece, believing her and Bill's relationship could be salvaged at that point, but she was wrong. Bill would also talk about me a lot, and she was always crying about being compared to his ex. When I got the job at the club, his behavior became more erratic. She told me that she confronted him after he was thrown out of the club because word travels fast and she heard about the whole thing. He got pissed, physically assaulted her, and then threw her out of his house. She got him arrested and he was fired from his job as a result. I thanked her for the information and promptly told her to never call me again. She asked me why, and I told her that she had no issue with being Bill's affair partner and hurting his wife, me, and kids, and that she was only calling me to get back at him for what he's done to her. I hung up and blocked her. I plan to go file for a restraining order today, but now I'm armed with more information that will make the process so much easier and go so much faster. Win for me. Merry Christmas, everyone. Smiley face. Nice, OP. This was a huge win for you. Not only did your crappy ex get arrested and you got to see that, but you also got to tell off the woman he was cheating on you with while you guys were married. Not that it mattered anyway, because you totally moved on from that whole thing, but it still must be a nice feeling to get that off your chest. Now, OP wasn't asking for advice or any kind of insight, so I'm not gonna read community comments and we're gonna move on straight to the update, which apparently is even better than the first part of the story. But before that, I'm gonna share with you all another one of my playlists like this one that only has updated stories. Now let's continue with the update. In my last post, you all read how my ex-in-laws and ex-husband Bill showed up at my job during the biggest event of the year. I am an exotic dancer and bartender at my current job. My ex is bitter that I am now in the best shape of my life and I look damn good compared to when he and I were together. I am dating an amazing guy named Kyle and my kids are doing great. On to the crazy. So, after my ex-in-laws were banned from my job, I sought the counsel of an attorney. I didn't want to wait it out anymore in hopes that they would just go away as I have in the past. I'm going for the jugular with this, so to speak. I filed for an emergency restraining order, citing that my kids and I aren't safe around my ex-mother-in-law and ex-husband. Ex-father-in-law is just a shell that lets ex-mother-in-law get away with crap and doesn't put her in her place. My restraining order was granted temporarily within 24 hours, thanks to all of the evidence I was able to provide. My ex-in-laws and Bill both were served that very same day. We had a hearing on the day before Christmas Eve where I was able to plead my case and the judge got to see all of the evidence I had proving why Bill and my ex-mother-in-law are dangerous for me and my kids. Ex-mother-in-law tried to pull a classic tactic of crying and wailing whenever I talked, so the judge would have to stop the proceedings to tell her to shut the F up. Eventually, I got through what I wanted to say and showed what I wanted. Then ex-mother-in-law and Bill were given the chance to say their piece. Ex-mother-in-law shushed Bill and completely stuck her foot into her mouth by blabbering on about religion and how God is judging me for not coming home to my husband's rule. The judge reminded her that Bill and I are legally divorced, and ex-mother-in-law shouted at him that no power on earth has the right to sever a marriage that is morally and spiritually binding forever. I was chosen to be Bill's wife by God, and I will honor it or there will be consequences. The judge asked her what she meant, and ex-mother-in-law tried to play coy and say, OP will see. The judge then asked Bill to say his piece. Bill looked uncomfortable. He tried to stand up, but ex-mother-in-law grabbed his arm and told him to sit down. The judge threatened to hold her in contempt and she let go, grumbling at him. Bill then stood up and moved away from ex-mother-in-law. He started ranting about how crazy she is and that he didn't want to be there. He said he thought he could manipulate me into sleeping with him, but he got tossed out on his ass when he tried and he gave up then and there. Ex-mother-in-law is the one that is doing all of this and he wants no part of it anymore. His life is ruined because everything he has done has been in an attempt to appease her and it has blown up in his face. He then begged the judge to uphold the restraining order because ex-mother-in-law told him that she plans to hurt me if I didn't comply with her demands. He said she was dangerous and unhinged and suggested she needed some kind of psychological help. Ex-mother-in-law was effing speechless, but one couldn't deny the look of absolute guilt plastered on her face. Turns out she does need psychological help. Ex-father-in-law stood up and asked to say a few words. The judge agreed because he looked to be entertained by the three-ring circus playing out in front of him. Ex-father-in-law went up to stand beside Bill and confessed to the judge that ex-mother-in-law is suffering from the effects of dementia and it has been a closely guarded secret between them for the past 2 years. ex-mother-in-law was receiving treatment but stopped when Bill and I moved away from the old state. Since then, she has gotten worse and he fears what she will do if left allowed to roam free. They have always been religious, but when ex-mother-in-law stopped treatment, she began experiencing psychotic episodes and delusions of grandeur. He also confessed that if I had agreed to let them take my youngest on holiday with them, my ex-mother-in-law had no intention of bringing him back. My jaw hit the floor. Ex-father-in-law looked at me and pled for forgiveness for not putting a stop to the insanity sooner. Bill also apologized for the hell he had put me through, stating he had been an idiot and hoped I could forgive him. Everything seemed to fall into place and things made sense. I never mentioned it, but I did notice whenever I saw ex-mother-in-law, she would be forgetful and stare off into space. She seemed confused at times and sometimes she didn't know who people were. I thought it was an act to avoid dealing with people. It was then I heard ex-mother-in-law shrieking. She got up and ran at ex-father-in-law and began beating on him until the bailiff pulled her off of him. She was put into cuffs and the judge ordered her to undergo 90 days in a psychiatric treatment facility. She screamed, wailed, and kicked as she was carried out of the room. The restraining order was granted for a year. I was completely numb and had no reaction when the verdict was given. I was confused and gobsmacked out of my effing mind at what I had just heard. I almost don't believe it happened and wondered if that edible I ate beforehand to calm my nerves was effing with my head. I spoke to ex-father-in-law after court. He is taking Bill back home to the old state to help him get back on his feet. He promised me he and Bill will never bother me again, and once ex-mother-in-law is released, he will ensure she doesn't either. I went home and hugged my kids and we went out to look at Christmas lights that night. Christmas was great. Hope yours was too. Extended from OP's comments. I've been researching dementia since that day. I had no idea how horrible it actually was until I started looking more into it. I feel so bad for her, but at the same time, she cannot come near me or my kids while she's like this. Ex-father-in-law told me that Bill had no clue about the diagnosis. Ex-mother-in-law never wanted to show that type of weakness to anyone, especially to her own son. Ex-mother-in-law's recent behavior came as a shock to him, as it did to me, but because he is her son, he went along with it to try to please her. He is a mama's boy and I can tell this broke him. I learned that ex-mother-in-law was trying to take me to court to take my son away from me. She didn't get far as Bill chose to terminate his rights, and she had only met my youngest once, leaving her high and dry with no legal leg to stand on. I honestly don't know why Bill chose to go along with her insanity. He's always tried pleasing her ever since he was a kid. Ex-father-in-law knew that ex-mother-in-law had no intention of bringing my son back if I let him go on holiday with them, and he was afraid of her. I think once he got into court, he suddenly grew a pair and felt safe enough to confess the truth. Wow, OP, of course it sucks that your ex-mother-in-law is going through all of that, but I'm still gonna count this as a happy update because you and your kids are doing great. You are protected now and apparently you are living your best life, so congratulations on all of it. So all that there's left to say is, thank you so much for sharing, OP, and all the best in the future. Take care. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out, so here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later, and also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.